The sentencing of former Bangladesh Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, Wajid, to death by the International Crimes Tribunal-1, marks one of the most dramatic and controversial moments in the modern political history of Bangladesh. The tribunal delivered its verdict after months of hearings, witness statements, forensic analysis, and arguments presented by both prosecution and defense, resulting in a 453-page judgment that has shaken the political, social, and international landscape surrounding Bangladesh. According to the court, Sheikh Hasina was found guilty of crimes against humanity connected to the violent crackdown carried out during the July 2024 Uprising, a massive student-led protest movement that swept through the country demanding political reforms, accountability, and an end to authoritarian practices. What started as a protest over quota reforms expanded rapidly into a nationwide rebellion, and the government's response, under Hasina's leadership, grew increasingly forceful, ultimately leading to accusations of mass killings, torture, enforced disappearances, and widespread brutality. Prosecutors argued that Hasina exercised complete authority over the state's security machinery and either ordered or allowed the use of lethal force, including drones, firearms, helicopters, and heavily armed riot police units against unarmed protesters. The tribunal stated that Sheikh Hasina not only failed to prevent the atrocities but actively incited violence through her speeches, directives, and administrative decisions. The prosecution presented evidence of intercepted communications and testimonies from senior officials that pointed toward a clear chain of command. In one of the most powerful pieces of evidence cited, a phone call allegedly recorded during the height of the protests featured Hasina speaking with senior law enforcement leadership, reportedly saying that the police had been instructed to shoot protesters wherever necessary to restore order, whether authentic or manipulated. The court accepted the audio as admissible evidence after forensic examination and treated it as a central component of the case. The tribunal concluded that under the principle of command responsibility in international criminal law, Hasina held direct and superior responsibility for actions taken under her authority. It found her guilty on multiple charges, including murder, torture, persecution, and the use of disproportionate force against civilians. 2 other senior officials were named as co-accused. Former Home Minister Asaduzzaman Kamal was also sentenced to death, as the court determined he played a crucial role in coordinating security operations and approving the use of deadly weapons. Meanwhile, former Inspector General of Police Chowdhury Abdullah Al-Mamun received a significantly reduced sentence of 5 years in prison because he confessed and cooperated extensively with the tribunal, becoming a state witness. His testimony reportedly provided insights into the decision-making processes within the upper levels of the government during the uprising. According to the tribunal, Mamun described meetings where operational details were discussed, orders from the top leadership were conveyed, and instructions were given to treat the protests as an existential threat to the government. He also admitted that the police force was instructed to use overwhelming force to suppress what officials believed could escalate into a nationwide revolt capable of toppling the government. Because of his cooperation, Mamun became the first person in the tribunal's history to be treated as both a convict and a prosecution witness. The case examined several major incidents, including the killing of student Abu Sayed in Rangpur and the mass shooting of 6 protesters in Chankrapul, Dhaka. Video footage, eyewitness accounts, and autopsy reports were presented showing bodies riddled with bullets shot at close range, drones dropping tear gas canisters on crowds, and helicopters hovering overhead in what appeared to be intimidation or crowd control tactics. Families of victims described the horror of seeing loved ones shot, beaten, or dragged away by plainclothed officers. Many bodies were discovered burned, disfigured, or dumped in remote areas, and investigators claimed that certain units of law enforcement attempted to destroy evidence of killings to avoid future accountability. The tribunal ruled that such acts amounted to crimes against humanity, defined under international law as widespread or systematic attacks against a civilian population. Security surrounding the trial was extraordinarily tight. The courthouse was guarded by the army, elite paramilitary units, and multiple layers of barriers to prevent unrest during the verdict announcement. The government live broadcast the proceedings, signaling a commitment to transparency. But many critics argue that the live streaming served political purposes more than judicial ones. For Hasina's supporters, the trial represents a politically motivated effort by her opponents to eliminate her influence permanently. They argue that she cannot receive a fair trial in her absence and that trials conducted in absentia often lack international standards of due process. Hasina herself, currently living in India after fleeing the country during the aftermath of the July uprising, has rejected the legitimacy of the court. In several recorded statements, she called the tribunal biased, unconstitutional, and controlled by political actors determined to rewrite history and criminalize her. Years in office. International reactions have been mixed. Some human rights groups welcome the verdict as a rare instance of a powerful leader being held accountable for mass violence. Others, however, express deep concern about the use of the death penalty, the neutrality of the tribunal, and the political context in which the trial occurred. The United Nations previously estimated that as many as 1,400 people might have been killed during the uprising, a figure far higher than government estimates. This discrepancy raised further questions about the role of the state and whether the violence was coordinated at the highest levels. Diplomatic tensions are expected to rise, particularly between Bangladesh and India, as Bangladesh may seek Hasina's extradition to enforce the sentence. India's response remains uncertain, given the complex political, historical, and strategic relationship between the two countries. Domestically, the verdict has deepened political polarization. The Awami League, Hasina's party, has rejected the ruling and called for mass protests, arguing that the trial is a blatant attempt to erase their political legacy. Many fear that the sentencing could trigger unrest, violence, or retaliatory actions by political supporters. For the victims' families and members of the protest movement, the verdict represents long-awaited justice and recognition of the suffering endured during the crackdown. The tribunal also ordered compensation for families of those killed or injured. Though it remains unclear how or when such compensation will be distributed, the verdict marks an extraordinary moment in Bangladesh's history. It serves as a stark reminder of the profound consequences of political actions and the enduring struggle for democracy, accountability, and human rights. Whether the judgment will bring reconciliation or fuel further conflict remains uncertain. What is clear is that the legacy of the July uprising and the court's ruling will shape Bangladesh's political trajectory for years to come. The sentencing of a former prime minister to death for crimes against humanity is unprecedented, a development that underscores both the seriousness of the events that unfolded and the intensity of the legal and political battle now unfolding across the region. As the world watches, Bangladesh stands at a crossroads, facing questions not only about justice and accountability but also about the future direction of its democracy, governance, and national identity.